let's take a second and talk about invitations. I'm talking about the exact step-by-step details on creating those invitations. First thing you're going to do is collect that guest list from your host. I allow my host to give it to me in multiple formats. They can either write it out on the guest list sheet that I give them and take a photo and text it to me, or they can type up an email to me. Some people will have me email the Excel spreadsheet that I use to make the guest list sheet, and they'll actually fill it in electronically online. Some people already have Christmas card labels from the previous year. Some people are super organized and have, a spreadsheet or some sort of list on their computer, so on and so forth. There's a ton of different ways they might get you their guest list. I personally want to make it easy for my hosts, so I tell them they can give it to me any way that's easiest for them. I will say probably the majority of people will fill out the sheet that I give them, take a photo, and text it to me. Once I have that, the next step is typing up those labels. I use the standard 30 labels per page address labels. You can buy those in generic brands from Target, Walmart, any office store. You also can buy the name brands like Avery and some others out there. So whichever you choose to do, I always just kind of go with the cheapest. And these are just plain 30 per page basic address labels. I use either a template online or Microsoft Word to type in the addresses. I personally am faster at typing than I am at writing, and so that's why I choose to type them into labels. I also feel that typed addresses go through the postal service a little bit better because you know that the numbers are going to be read correctly by all of their machinery. It's not real people that sort that anymore. It's all by machine. So you want to make sure everything's very legible. However, if you don't have a printer or you're faster at writing, you can absolutely hand address every single invitation if you prefer. So like I said, I get a sheet of labels. I either print out my host list that she's given to me, or I'll have it up on my computer screen and I'll toggle back and forth between her list and my address label sheet so that I can just type in each guest's address one at a time. But it's a pretty fast process. I can type up a whole sheet of 30 labels in probably around 5 to 10 minutes. So hopefully you're the same. The other thing is, once you have one sheet of labels saved on your computer, instead of going to find that template again or start a new file every time, I just open up the last one I did, and then I just, type over the previous addresses with the new host addresses, and then I just save it as the new file for the new host. The reason I do the address labels first is because I need to figure out how many invitations I need to print and create for her. So by typing up those address labels first, I'm going to know exactly how many. Sometimes people will give me 40, 45, 50 addresses, and sometimes even though I'm asking for 30, they might only give me 25, 27. So I actually type up all the labels, count up exactly how many I'm going to need. The next step is going to be creating your custom invitation. I have a template under files on our Dove Dynasty team Facebook page. Okay. Also, your leader or sponsor may have emailed you a copy. In the past, I may have even emailed you a copy. So there's lots of places where you could find this invitation template. The reason I use the invitation that I do is because it's more cost effective. I, as you know, am a cheapskate, and so I like to keep things as cost effective as possible. So by using the template that I provide, you're going to be able to print on regular paper with mostly black ink. Okay, those are the two cost savers. Number one, even though I use colored paper for my invitations, each sheet is still ranging anywhere from 3 to 6 cents a sheet. So that's really cost effective. The most I'm paying for an invitation is 6 cents for that piece of paper. On the ink, that's a little bit harder to estimate, but depending on your printer, I'm not even going to guess, but it's still only change. It's pocket change that you're spending to print these invitations. Plus, they're customized with your host name and address, the time of the party, and you get to print it in nice big bold print, which I think can really help for a lot of our party guests. The wonderful thing about chocolate is every age group loves chocolate. It's not just, a certain demographic or a certain age group. So I think it's nice that doing a full page invitation allows us to print everything in larger font for people. So you'll take my template, and all you'll really have to change is just the host name, her address, the date of the party. I always put a cell phone number for people to RSVP to. Anything else that you want to put in there. In the Dove Dollars game, you can customize that. Maybe from party to party, there's different themes or different occasions that you want to, encourage people to wear a certain color, dress a certain way. Bring a certain donation for maybe a local women's shelter instead of a canned food that month. So you have all the power to customize these invitations. But once you've customized them and you've loaded your colored paper into your printer, you're going to print out the number of invitations that the host gave you in terms of number of names of her guests. So make that line up. Then Sometimes your host might ask for a few extra invitations for her to hand out herself. So what I usually do is pop those in an envelope for her. So let's say she asked me for 5 invitations to hand out, plus she gave me a list of 30 names and addresses. So right there, I'm going to print out 35 invitations. Okay. So the next thing is you're going to fold these invitations. Once they're printed, you fold them in thirds, kind of like a brochure, just like as if you were going to put it into an envelope. You know, you fold over a third of the sheet and then fold the other flap over that. Okay, so now you've got this folded letter, so to speak, or invitation that could go into an envelope. However, once again, envelopes cost money, and so I don't use them. Instead, what I do is I use Scotch tape, and I just put a piece of tape, maybe a couple inches wide, you can do smaller or larger, and I tape the flap, so if you folded the piece of paper over and then you fold the last flap over, I'm securing that piece. So it's kind of like if you've ever received maybe a restaurant menu in the mail for takeout or a brochure. A lot of times they come in this format. It's really just an 8.5 by 11 brochure or piece of paper, but they folded it in thirds and then it's sealed with some sort of sticker or tape. The key here is you're going to fold and tape all of these. Okay. Now here's the kicker. When you're getting ready to affix your label, you're going to want to make sure that flap that you taped, wherever your tape is, make sure that's at the top of the invitation. The reason for that is, again, it's machinery that's going to process your mail as it goes out to your guests. And so the machinery slides these invitations, you can imagine as same thing as if they were in an envelope. It slides it through a machine and it prints this little code. You may not even have noticed, but pick up a piece of your mail and you'll notice there's a little kind of code printed at the bottom of the envelope. So that's the most important part of your letter or your invitation that you're sending out. So the reason I make sure the flap is towards the top is because that bottom piece is where it's going to go through a printer through the U.S. Postal Service, and it's more likely to get caught in the machinery if that flap corner is there. So I always make sure that the bottom edge of my invitation is actually a folded edge, so that it's not a loose corner that might get stuck in a machine. I know that sounds a little technical, but if you go right now, pause this video, grab a piece of paper, fold it in thirds, and look at where the flap would be where you'd put a piece of tape, you'll see what I mean. At the bottom, now you've just got a solid, folded edge. That's going to go through the machinery wonderfully. I will tell you, I've been doing my invitations like this for 7 years, so I can tell you, and I also have been part of different organizations where I've mailed out brochures for them over the years, and so I promise you, this method works, and it is allowed by the Postal Service. You sometimes will run into some grouchy postal employees that will tell you, oh, you can't do it that way, but the rules are, yes, you can. Some of them will tell you, I've had some of them give me advice and say, oh, you know what, you should put tape not only on the flap edge, but also on the 2 shorter edges on the ends, that would help as well. And if nothing else, they said you could put a piece of tape on the right-hand edge. So if you're looking at your letter and you're looking at the address, you're reading it, it's facing correctly so you can read it left to right. The right-hand edge, because that's the direction that it gets fed into the printer and the machinery. So I know that's super, super technical. Don't even worry about it. Like I said, I never put extra tape. I only tape the flap edge to seal the invitation together. But all in all, over the years, this is going to save you some money because typically envelopes can range anywhere from when you get them on sale, I think, you're spending maybe 7 or 8 cents all the way up to some envelopes are 50 cents. So it just depends on how fancy you get. So if you figure over the years of sending out maybe 30 invitations for every party, that's a lot of money that could add up over the years. Plus, it also is time. It takes extra time to actually insert the invitation into the envelope and either rip off the adhesive strip or the old-fashioned ones that you still come by, where you have to lick them. So it can just take extra time. So that's why I do it the way I do it. But I will say, take note and make sure the tape is always on top. I always do that, and it's worked out great for me over the years. No problems whatsoever. Now, whether you put your invitations into envelopes or you do it with this method, keep in mind that the track record for mailing anything will tell you that some are not going to make it. So just don't get really hung up on the fact that some of them might get stuck in the machinery, because it's going to happen whether it's in an envelope or not. All right, so now you've got all of your invitations folded up, you've got them taped at the top. Now what you're going to do is go through, and this is the fun part. This is the part that my kids actually help me with a lot of the time. You're just going to stick one of your address labels that you printed off onto each invitation. And then stick a stamp in the upper right hand corner and you're ready to go. Pop those babies in the mail, and the best feeling in the world is knowing that once those invitations are mailed, your party is going to happen. That's one of the best parts of doing the invitations for your hosts. When you give them the responsibility of handing out invitations, mailing out invitations, whatever it may be, you don't really know if those things have ever gone out. You don't know how well she's done on inviting. You don't know how many people were actually invited. However, when you do it yourself, you know that you just popped 30 invitations into the mail and that party's going to happen. So that's usually, I kind of do a happy dance every time I pop invitations into the mail, because that means each one of those parties is going to happen. All right. Have a great day. Contact me with questions.